What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the finale of my 2022 NFL Deep Dive series. As today, we're going to be breaking down my number one ranked team in the NFL heading into the year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video. We have an amazing guest this week. Trevor Sikkema of PFF took some time to join the show, so you're not going to want to miss that one. Make sure you stick around till the end. But I got to say, man, I almost can't believe we made it. I really committed a lot for this series. I really wanted this to be even better than it's been in the past. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that has enjoyed this series, that have given great feedback, that have been able to apply to this series as we've gone on. So you guys are awesome, man. I'm super passionate about this series. I'm really proud of the about 45 hours of football content that we've put out in just this series alone, and it's really fun to see you guys are just as passionate about this series maybe as I am. So thank you for watching, whether this is your first one or you've binged the entire series. I do want to say, if you have enjoyed the series, if you do enjoy my football content and you want to show your support in a bigger way, check out my Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. And you'll also get even more exclusive content over there. So right now you can get the full spreadsheet with all of the rankings from this series. I've mentioned some of the, even the team rankings, but the position rankings will have adjusted throughout this summer due to trades, injuries, transactions. So you can see where everybody stands right now heading into week one there on Patreon. You'll also get access to my weekly NFL picks. Week one will be public here on YouTube, aiming for Saturday for that, but exclusive every week after that on Patreon, with maybe a couple of them sneaking onto the public look here on YouTube. But you will get access to my weekly NFL picks, gambling predictions, where I have yet to finish a season picking under the spread. So for the gamblers out there, I think you guys will really enjoy that. You'll get exclusive film content. You'll get the ability to submit questions to my Fully Inflated Football podcast, and you'll get merchandise discounts, something that's just around the corner here. So tons of exclusive stuff there for you on Patreon, where you'll also support my channel. Thank you for hearing me out about that. But without further ado, let's get into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and please do hit that like button, by the way. Really helps me out. But yeah, let's talk about the Bucs, my number one team in the 2022 power rankings heading into the year. And there's been some talk over training camp, some negative energy. Brady took some time away from the team. Ryan Jensen goes down. This team doesn't seem to be heading into week one with a whole lot of momentum, so to speak. But I still look at this team as incredibly loaded, the most well-rounded roster in the league, one of the best coach teams, one of the best quarterbacked teams. This team to me is still incredible, and I think all it's going to take is we get a little bit of week one football action. I think there's Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys opening night. Like, they win that, all that training camp talk is going to be behind them, and I really do think this team is remarkably talented. But that said, they did have a fascinating offseason with some losses. So let's take a look at their key departures and additions. Of course, Bruce Arians is going to leave as head coach, and I will talk in depth about the staff situation here momentarily and what that might look like, but certainly notable. They also lose their entire interior offensive line. One guy to retirement, Ali Marpet. One guy to injury, Ryan Jensen. And one guy to free agency, Alex Kappa. So that is going to be the pretty much lone question mark for the Bucs that we'll talk a lot about when we get to the offensive line. They, I guess, lost Rob Gronkowski. I'm still not convinced he won't be back. Similar could probably be said about Ndamukong Suh, who's still hanging out there in free agency. But Suh wasn't even really that good last year. I think they're ready to move on from him. Jason Pierre-Paul on the way out, ready to replace him with Joe Tryon stepping in, their first-round pick last year. And then Jordan Whitehead, a good safety who they also lost in free agency, along with some smaller departures. Backup running back Ronald Jones, O.J. Howard, who Doesn't seem to be wanted by anybody these days. Same with Tyler Johnson, who they didn't want, and Steve McClendon, who's, an 85-year-old nose tackle. So not so much big losses there, but notable. A lot of losses this offseason, but a lot of additions as well. I still don't think this was a necessarily bad offseason for the Bucs. So they get really one of the biggest value acquisitions of the entire offseason when they bring in Shaq Mason from the Patriots, to me still playing at a Pro Bowl level. So he's going to help supplement some of those losses on the interior offensive line, along with drafting Luke Goddick in the second round. And then really upgrading the receiver situation, getting Russell Gage and Julio Jones into the building. They also add Akeem Hicks, which to me is another answer to Ndamukong Suh and an upgrade there. Logan Hall in the early second round of the draft, some influx of youth and athleticism to that defensive line. They retool the tight end room as well, bringing in Kyle Rudolph and Cade Otton to answer the loss of Gronk a little bit more. Rashad White in the third round, a fascinating running back to answer the Ronald Jones departure. And then Carl Nassib on the edge, Logan Ryan at safety. So a lot of fresh blood getting brought in here. And like I mentioned earlier, this is still a really talented roster that I'm excited to break down here. But let's first talk about this coaching staff here, which is one of the more fun staffs in the league. And this is really one of the best and most exciting staffs in the league, even though Bruce Arians left. And Bruce wasn't kidding when he said that he wanted to leave setting up his coaches for success. And I think that he's being honest about that. I know there was all the weird, like Brady, Sean Payton maybe leaving, and maybe Bruce and Brady weren't buddy-buddy, but I really do believe Bruce Arians, especially having, listened to his book, that he just wants to set up his coaches with success. These are his dudes, and he wanted them to be put with a talented roster in a situation where they could really thrive. And I think they have that through and through here. And I'll just prelude to the Trevor Sikkema interview a little bit, because we do talk about this coaching staff and scheme there. These are the guys that did the game planning last year. So it's not really a huge concern losing Bruce Arians, who to me was more of a CEO type at this stage in his career anyway. And you could even make a case that he would get into the game plan late in the week and make adjustments, and that was some of the frustration with Tom Brady and probably even Byron Leftwich. So it could be even better coaching this year. So I'm really not worried about it. I rank them 5th for pass game coaching, 11th for run game coaching, and 4th for defensive coaching overall. Todd Bowles, 17th among head coaches. I'm very optimistic that he'll step in and maybe even continue to climb there. So just as far as the general outlook, I really believe in these guys to have a well-run ship, pun unintended, I guess, being the Bucs here. But yeah, man, this is it's going to be a really fun coaching staff. As far as what the scheme is going to look like here on both sides of the ball, so with the offense, Byron Leftwich, a young offensive mind, was just a quarterback in the league 6 years ago. So someone with a lot of those forward-thinking philosophies, but having learned under Bruce Arians, really since he became a coach, someone that does have a lot of pro-style influence, someone that will go under center, run gap, power offense, and a lot of play-action shots off of that as well. That's kind of your classic pro style at the core. But you have that no risk it, no biscuit. 4 verts is an integral part of Bruce Arians' offense, or at least some branch of deep passing combinations similar to 4 verticals. And you're definitely going to get that here with Byron Leftwich. But excited to see him kind of take the reins for himself, and what sort of modern principles might he introduce? Do you see a little bit more spread, a little bit more, wide zone Shanahan stuff? Who knows? The world is his oyster now. So I love Byron Leftwich, and they're certainly happy to retain him here, and probably going to be a head coach next year. It seems very likely. He was almost the Jags head coach this year. So they keep him around. And then defensively, Todd Bowles is such a beast, man. Like I said, they rank 4th for me in the NFL for defensive coaching. And Todd Bowles is effectively the defensive coordinator here. They do have Casey Rogers, who's been with Todd Bowles for about 15 years, going all the way back to Dallas in like 2004, was it? 2005. You got Larry Foote, who's a more recent player in the league, but was with Todd Bowles in Arizona and Tampa Bay here. So it's a familiar staff. Really no changes on that side of the ball at all. And Bowles brings a very unique defense, something you don't see really too many places around the league, if anywhere. And it's this attacking 3-4 defense. I guess Jacksonville did hire their defensive coordinator from last year, but still a unique system that you just don't see a ton of in a league where everyone's kind of playing off quarters, 4-man pressures. No, Todd Bowles is a little bit more of a throwback, so to speak, at this point, where he's not afraid to bring the heat. I think Todd Bowles is the best, I would say, stunt coordinator, if that makes sense, as far as designing blitzes and creating phantom pressures where offensive lines are shifting towards someone that actually ends up dropping into coverage, which means they end up either blocking air or going to double team someone that shouldn't be doubled because you've got a blitzing defensive back or a linebacker wrapping or any combination of things. That Todd Bowles is amazing at creating maybe 2 or 3 times a game an unblocked blitzer that just can't get picked up because he mixes up his blitz scheme so much. So that's the most value he brings to the table. But he also is not afraid to mix up his coverages on the back end. A team that prior to this year was viewed very much as a man cover team. But last year, a lot more cover 2, cover 3, someone that's definitely not afraid to mix up his coverages based on his personnel. So an incredible defensive coordinator. I will spoil right now, the Bucs defense will rank as the number 1 defense in the NFL for me. So I'm very optimistic for Todd Bowles and what he's going to bring to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year as their head coach and defensive mind. But now let's get into the roster and talk about the pieces that these coaches are going to have to play with. And Tom Brady at quarterback is kind of an extension of the coaching staff, to be completely honest. At 45, 46 years old, he ranks as the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL for me. And, he's physically speaking, looks just as good as he ever has. The ball velocity is honestly only going up. The one thing I will say about that is, there is a notable difference between Tom Brady throwing from a foundation in the pocket where he can use his core strength, use his mechanics to really rip that thing, where you actually see him throw some of the higher velocity lasers that you'll see in the league, as opposed to when he's on the move, throwing off his back foot, under pressure. That's where you maybe do see, whether it's age or lack of raw physical arm talent, whatever it may be, that's where you will see it show up. But really beyond that, I mean, there's nothing Brady and mobility in general, there's nothing Brady can't do. I mean, he's, at this point in time, by far the best processor of defenses, the best decision maker from the pocket. His accuracy is impeccable. Not just putting it on guys, but putting it right in stride. No one's better at, hitting Godwin on a slant or whoever it may be, Leonard Fournette out of the backfield on a swing pass where they don't have to change their momentum at all. And that's such an underrated aspect of Tom Brady's game. The other underrated aspect of his game is, no, he's not a mobile guy. He's not going to do what Josh Allen can do, Patrick Mahomes can do. But what he does even better than those players and about as good as anybody in the league is have that natural poise and pocket presence in the pocket where he can navigate pressure, sense pressure, and manipulate the pocket to extend plays within the pocket as good as anybody. And it's just those subtle movements that he does that most quarterbacks in the league don't. The ones that do are other elite quarterbacks for the most part. And no, he doesn't extend plays like Mahomes does. He's not going to run around for 4 or 5 seconds, but he does extend plays and provide value beyond the structure of the initial read and the initial play call. He often gets that system quarterback tag, and I think an evolution of myself is 4 years ago when I first started this channel, I certainly would have used that tag on Tom Brady, but just understanding the game more. It goes so much further than that, and he really does, like, he just like makes the most of a already great core around him. I would say he probably wouldn't be able to elevate a poor core like a more mobile quarterback could, because he just can't find all of those windows. But with he opens up the structure of the offense, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the consistency, the accuracy, all of it. I mean, he still was, he had one of his best years of his career last year. So Brady's still incredible. I'm not worried about the 2 weeks off he took. I've been burned by Brady enough to bet against him because he took 2 weeks to spend with his family or get plastic surgery or whatever it was. I'm not going to bet against him now. He is 46 years old. At some point, he's going to have to retire. At some point, the physical tools are going to drop off. But I'm done predicting that to happen. He's a freak of nature in that type of way. So there's your Brady breakdown. Obviously, a huge reason this team ranks number 1 in the league. You've got Blaine Gabbert as their backup. Don't want to go to that. Kyle Trask. He's still Nick Foles to me. Nothing more, nothing less. So it's all about Brady here. No surprise. And let's now talk about the weaponry here. So the Bucs for me rank 6th in the NFL for weaponry. You've got Chris Godwin currently injured, but set to be back within the first few weeks of the season. And I'm just going to basically, factor that in. But I fully expect Godwin to get back to speed and be a big part here. But let's start with Mike Evans as this team's alpha wide receiver. And I've been critical of Evans in the past just because he's not Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. He's not that elite separator. But when you can pair him with a guy like Chris Godwin who can be that player, you've got a 1A, 1B type of approach there. And he's a dominant ball winner. He's got great release off the line of scrimmage, mostly just because he punches guys and throws them to the side. And there's nothing a 6-foot corner, a 5'11" corner can truly do about it. You will see him get taken out of games. It's been proven over time. I think there are overrated aspects of Mike Evans' game because he just does not have that high-end separation ability that I prefer in a true number 1 wide receiver. But beyond that, I don't really have any knocks on him. He is a guy that uses his 6'5" frame to his best advantage. Not every big receiver plays as physical, tracks the ball as well, utilizes his size advantage as well as Mike Evans. And when he can build up speed, he has pretty good long speed to contribute as a deep threat as well. So Mike Evans is an awesome sort of 1A, 1B, whichever one you want to choose option. And then Chris Godwin is your other probably 1B in this case. And Godwin's just the perfect complement to Mike Evans because he is a dominant player from the slot and working in the short to intermediate part of the game and over the middle of the field as well, whereas Mike Evans is much better on the outside. So you got a perfect complement there. Godwin, much more explosive off the line of scrimmage, much more explosive right after the catch. He's going to be their crossing route guy, their slant guy, their bubble screen guy. And he works perfectly with Tom Brady in that short to intermediate part of the game that Brady works so well in. And we haven't really gotten to see that full-on consistency with Godwin really exploding onto the senior. It's not that he's been bad or underproduced, but I really think Godwin in this offense has a chance to be a guy that ascends to that top 5 wide receiver conversation with a top quarterback like Tom Brady. We've had Antonio Brown here complicating a lot of those targets for a while. Godwin's been injured, so I think we haven't yet seen the best of Tom Brady and Chris Godwin, and that could still be ahead if he can get back healthy, which I fully expect. So one of the best wide receiver 1-2 punches in the league, if not the best. And then you have Russell Gage getting brought in here, along with Julio Jones. You're going to see Russell Gage as this team's starting 3rd wide receiver, and he's also going to work, from the slot and from the perimeter. Both Godwin and Russell Gage will be interchangeable in that way. But Gage is kind of the ideal third wide receiver, was forced into a role as Atlanta's number one wide receiver last year, and he actually stepped up to the occasion and showed that he can handle a high workload. But in a situation here where he's just kind of a guy that's going to get lost, particularly over the middle of the field where he's at his best, someone that works really well as far as like catching in traffic. And I think a lot of people hear that and think, oh, that's winning 50-50 balls. No, that's like finding that little spot between the linebacker and the safety, knowing you're about to get hit. You're open, you're Tom Brady open, where he's going to throw that ball where knowing you're going to get hit. And Russell Gage is perfect at like being that physical guy to go make those tough catches, knowing he's going to get hit. So he fits in perfectly with this offense. And then you have Julio Jones, who's going to be just like a gadget, not a gadget player, because that's got a different connotation, but like I guess I'm struggling to come up with a good term for it, but he's going to play like 15 snaps a game. He's going to come in on big downs, big games, big plays, either as a fourth wide receiver, as a sub in for probably Russell Gage. And he's the guy that I think him and Brady are going to have 2 or 3 different routes, different answers to certain coverages where they're going to have that high IQ chemistry type of connection where Julio Jones is drawing a third corner, and if you get this leverage, I want you to play it this way. If you get a different leverage, just run over the top, like whatever it may be. They're going to have certain rules and adjustments in those critical passing downs, and that's where Julio Jones is going to be so freaking annoying. And he's in a situation where he has Tom Brady's luck, and he doesn't have to play a full season. He can basically get, 350 snaps in the regular season and stay healthy. So I actually think Julio stays healthy here in Tampa. It's like the one spot where it might have been able to happen for him. So perfect landing spot for him. Gets a chance to go get a ring. He's going to be extremely annoying, especially in January. Probably not going to do much. I know when the season starts, he'll have a bigger role. With Chris Godwin out, so that's another reason he's here, is he can start, I suppose, the first couple weeks of the year. But yeah, once Godwin's back, I think they'll kind of put him on reserves on a pitch count, if you will, and he's going to be freaking obnoxious to try and defend as a fourth wide receiver. It's just unfair. Then they got pretty good depth behind that, a couple different diversity of skill sets. You got a couple deep threats in Perriman, Scotty Miller, and then Jalen Darden, one of my favorite players in last year's draft, absolutely buried here, but really want to see them get creative with him, line him up in the backfield, run routes as a running back, jet sweeps, just simplify his route tree, manufacture touches for him. Really explosive player that I still think has really good football ahead of him if the Bucs and Tom Brady want to trust him. Now, your tight end and running back situation is not quite what the receiver situation is. How could it be? But Cameron Brate's going to step in as this team's starting tight end. He's fine. He's a guy that, has played a million years in this league, is somehow stuck around here in Tampa Bay. So someone that Brady's still going to be familiar with. And some of those option routes and stuff that Brady and Gronk were just always in sync on, it's not going to be quite the same, but he can still do some of that stuff. You wish he was a little bit of a better of a blocker, but he's fine. Kyle Rudolph, to me, is just going to be a, heavy package, red zone threat. I don't think Kyle Rudolph was ever that good, but especially now, he's just so slow and clunky. And he's got a big, strong pair of hands. He'll be a red zone target. But beyond that, I don't see a whole lot coming from Kyle Rudolph this year. Not a bad signing, but not a excellent player or anything. Cade Otton, really fun pick here. My pro comp for him was Cameron Brate as a physical tight end, but a little bit lighter. So the blocking aspects, the physical, ability to consistently win contested catches, that's not always there with Cade Otton, but a smooth route runner, steady pair of hands, and I think there's a decent enough chance that he ends the season as their best tight end. And then you got Ko Kieft, who's a blocker out of Minnesota. Running back situation, Leonard Fournette is going to be their primary back this year. And I think he's going to have a pretty productive year, not just as a runner, but in the receiving game, where I think he's kind of elevated his game in certain ways. He's always had pretty good numbers in that part of the game, but I think he's really been coached up well, frankly, by Tom Brady. And, he's shown to be a reliable receiving back. Not the shiftiest guy, not going to make a million guys miss in open space, but a productive, good receiving back here. You've got Rachaad White coming in, who is just a smooth athlete, an explosive player. They've had a hard time kind of hitting on these young running backs. I think this is the best player out of the Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughns and all the guys that they've took swings at. I think this is the best prospect they've brought in among that group. So I'm optimistic for him. I don't know how much we see from him, but if anything were to happen to Leonard Fournette, or if Leonard Fournette, who showed up at camp at 260 pounds, is taking his newly found paycheck to fast food joints, Rachaad White could probably step in and be a pretty damn good receiving back for them. Keyshawn Vaughn's really struggled in that department. It's been a big part of why he's had a hard time getting on the field. And then they do also have Gio Bernard, who's still in the league, still a consistent receiving threat, just a smaller guy who's probably lost about a half a step. So, it's an adequate group of tight ends and running backs, but nothing that really moves the needle there. Still, for me, the sixth ranked group of weapons in the league paired with the number 3 quarterback. So, obviously, pretty damn good there. And then we get to this offensive line. And yes, there's some question marks here, right? You lost your entire interior starting 3. But I will say, leaning on a third round center in year 2 and a second round guard as a rookie on a team that has earned a ton of the benefit of the doubt with this offensive line, and they have a quarterback that elevates their offensive line because he gets rid of the ball so quick and he navigates pressure so well. Tom Brady has consistently protected his offensive line better than maybe any quarterback ever. So given those two things, for the only question marks on this team to be, again, a third round center in year 2 and a second round guard in year 1, I think they're going to be just fine. It might not be quite what it was last year with the best offensive line in the NFL, but I still think this is a pretty damn good group. So for pass protection, they still rank 10th for me, and for run blocking, they come in 20th. But you still have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL, where you have Donovan Smith at left tackle, who's a big, almost plodding left tackle, a power blocker, if you will, where he's going to protect against inside moves. He's going to protect with his anchor. You're not going to run through him. If you're going to beat Donovan Smith as a rusher, you kind of have to win around the edge. And it can happen, but Brady is so good at stepping up in the pocket that the ways that Donovan Smith tends to lose are something that Brady protects. And there's no coincidence that Donovan Smith started grading out really well the second they went from Jameis Winston to Tom Brady there. As a run blocker, he's fine. Big dude. He can move people. He can down block in power. So he's good for the systems that they run, but just not the best get off and even tenacity in the run game. At right tackle, you have Tristan Wirfs, who's in the conversation for the best right tackle in the NFL. It's either him, Lane Johnson, or Ryan Ramczyk. Pick your poison. Whichever one you want to go with is fine by me. Wirfs is a freak. I've said he's the Saquon Barkley of athletes of offensive tackles. Guys his size aren't supposed to move the way he does. So he's a weapon in the run game. Uses his size and his power and his tenacity and his athleticism all to his advantage. Room to get even better there as far as consistency and block awareness, but for the most part, a monster in the run game and in pass protection. I think only getting better, honestly. The technique, he actually has occasional ugly losses on film, but for the most part, he's just super stable. And like I said, he's one of the best right tackles in the NFL. There's not a whole lot else to say there. You have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL, which gives you just a really nice baseline. Then you look inside. You got Shaq Mason, who's still a stud at right guard. Can't believe he went for a 6th round pick. He's still paid handsomely here, but man, to get him for a 6th after losing Kappa was just a no-brainer. And in pass protection, he's good. He's never been an elite pass protector. That's never been what stands out most about him. But he's still technically sound. He's rocked up, solid anchor. Just, he's he's not like the best athlete or the guy with the quickest feet or the best arm length, but for the most part, a good pass protector and a dominant run blocker. One of the best in the league at guard. So you're happy bringing him in. You're more than happy. You're thrilled. You're popping champagne. And then you have, of course, your wild cards at center and left guard with basically 2 rookies here. So Robert Hainsey at center, they really like him. It was really assumed that they would bring in a veteran center, and maybe J.C. Treader kind of wanting to retire, or him potentially getting kind of not necessarily blackballed, but a lot of players maybe didn't want someone that was a part of the NFLPA in the locker room. There's a lot of kind of politics involved there, and that was something Treader talked about. But they like Robert Hainsey. They trust him. They spent a 3rd-round pick on him for a reason. They clearly believe in his kind of locker room energy, his work ethic. Notre Dame offensive lineman is a good bet to make, right? I thought his tape was fine. I had him as a day 3 player, but it makes sense that they see him as an interior guy, shorter arm length, wasn't a high-end tackle prospect, which is what he played at Notre Dame. And he was only like 295 pounds. So you hope he's maybe added some weight, improved that anchor a little bit. That to me is going to be the question, is how is he going to handle power? And is he going to be able to move people and keep those nose tackles off the back in all of those gap runs that they want to run? That's going to be the question mark with him. But I do believe in Robert Hainsey and think he's earned the benefit of the doubt, or at least the Bucs have. And then Luke Goddard at left guard, I can't rate him too high, but I feel I'm really not worried about Luke Goddard. It'd be Robert Hainsey would be the bigger question for me. I think both are trending up. Luke Goddard, to me, was someone that I kind of flirted with the idea early draft. I never went as far as putting him ahead of Bernard Raymond, but I kind of flirted with the idea that I almost like him better, or that they're pretty much the same prospects. And they were really close. Both really athletic guys, incredible run blockers, lighter players with shorter arm length. And, Luke Goddard, a younger guy, ended up actually getting drafted ahead of Bernard Raymond, which was definitely not the betting favorite, if you will. But I think he's going to be a really good guard. I really do. I see what they like in him. Something that you don't talk a lot about with offensive linemen is blocking awareness, just like knowing who to block. Obviously, like, you're going to have your initial assignment. That's pretty straightforward for most players. But climbing to the second level, once you get into space or on screens, like, there's an added ability to know, like, just go get someone, go hit someone, go take them out of the play. If it's not who the textbook says you're supposed to block, it's going to be okay. Just go find someone and take them out. A lot of guys just don't have that general awareness to do that. And that was something that really stood out with Luke Goddard, just such a natural run blocker. And I think he's going to be really good in that aspect of the game if the strength components are there. Pass protection, it's just a question mark. He's moving in from the tackle position. I think his experience there will improve his technique at guard, but the anchor would be the concern there. So if this team's going to struggle, it's going to be probably moving people in that left side A gap, and it's probably going to be dealing with powerful rushers pushing the pocket from the left side of the field there. So it's certainly a question mark and something that this team's going to have to answer if they want to win a Super Bowl. But in general, I feel pretty good about this group. You have Josh Wells, who's kind of a prototype veteran swing tackle, so that's a good backup to have. And then, honestly, a real lack of depth after that. So another injury here would really start to be a concern. So that's probably the biggest weakness of this offensive line. They've already suffered a couple of injuries. So, that's a big thing there. The skill players also, I think, ding the run blocking a little bit. Cameron Brate, Kyle Rudolph, not the best blockers. Cade Otton, unproven. Mike Evans has not consistently been a high-effort run blocker. You do have Chris Godwin, who is an awesome run blocker from the slot. He's honestly probably their best run-blocking skill player, like tight ends included. Russell Gage is solid. I think run blocking here is going to be good, not great. And then we've got your running backs, where they rank 18th in the league for me. It's a pretty good group. Leonard Fournette earns the big contract extension here. A bit of a surprise that they retained him, honestly. I think it was just assumed he would go elsewhere, but they love what he does as far as the scheme fit here. They love gap running, which caters to Leonard Fournette really well. He's a bit of a throwback, kind of like old Adrian Peterson, at least stylistically. Like, just give him a lane. You don't really want him like running inside zone, trying to sort through traffic and show off his vision. Like, that's not really his game. But if you got pulling guards in front of him, give him a gap to run through, let him hit his top speed where he's really good at putting on stiff arms, hitting home runs, and making guys miss at the second level. It's a good scheme fit. So like, I see why they like him. I don't think the contract was egregious or anything. And yeah, he's shown to be the motivated version of himself here in Tampa, which is kind of frustrating that he shows up at camp at 260 pounds after he just got another payday, someone that we know was very boisterous in Jacksonville about wanting to get paid. So if there's a question about Leonard Fournette, is the work ethic there? Is he bought into this season? I think he's probably going to be able to get into shape. It's not that hard when you're at practice every day in the Florida heat. Like, I think he'll be just fine and be what he was last year, which is a really good running back. So I'm not necessarily worried about Leonard Fournette. I think there's just maybe keep an eye on the situation, I suppose. But I really like the Rachaad White pick as well. Another guy that makes a ton of sense schematically, very similar to what I said about Leonard Fournette. Give him a lane to run through, a ton of acceleration through the hole. He's not quite as big, but very shifty, really nice jump cut, and long arms to put on stiff arms to safeties and linebackers coming in with bad angles in those gap runs. So yeah, he's a good fit. I think if something happens to Leonard Fournette, I'd be really excited to see what Rachaad White is going to offer here. You got Keyshawn Vaughn. Honestly, just kind of take him or leave him. Has shown some highlights, but I've just never been a big Keyshawn Vaughn guy. I thought he was overdrafted and hasn't really taken this coaching staff by storm. Clearly, they're replacing him with Rachaad White, and then Gio Bernard's just kind of your scat back. But yeah, it's a good running back room. I think they're pretty damn solid, ranking 18th in the league. And then you're not getting a whole lot from Tom Brady as far as play action boots and read options. He's going to give you a 0% run game multiplier. So this offense is still going to rank incredibly high for me. It's mostly there with the passing game where they're second in the league. I mean, this was a remarkably productive offense last year. Yeah, their offensive line isn't quite what it was, but as I mentioned, I still think you're going to have a really damn good group up front. You've got one of the best combinations of quarterback, weapons, and coaching staff in the league, if not the best. So that's going to help this team just dominate in the passing game, obviously. So they rank second for me in passing game, and then they are going to come in 20th in the run game. You don't have the threat of Tom Brady in the run game. You don't have incredible run blocking here. I think it's fine. The skill players on the perimeter aren't the best at setting the edge. You don't have a dominant running back room. So they're a pretty good run game, but it's not like anything you're terrified. You're scared of the Bucs dropping back and picking you apart in the passing game. But they still have enough pieces to hurt you. Like, if you're running gap with Shaq Mason leading the way, like, there's still something there in the run game that they can make you pay if you're not ready to defend the run. So it's not like a horrible run game either. But then we have this defense that I spoiled earlier is going to be my number one ranked defense in the NFL. I think this defensive roster is incredible. They're well coached. Let's get into it. So the defensive line comes in just on the brink of top 10 from a pass rush perspective, literally ranking 10th and number one in the NFL in D-line run defense, where this has been a brick wall for 2 years in a row, and I don't expect it to be any different. Obviously, a big part of the brick wall here is Vita Vea. Let's just talk about him first. I think the best true nose tackle in the NFL right now. I don't know who would even truly compete. I think DJ Reader's up there, but yeah, I mean, he's a space eater. You cannot move the guy. I would say he's good at shedding blocks. I think like that could actually be a case. Like, I think DJ Reader showed me. I think he might actually be a little bit better at shedding blocks. But Vita Vea, as far as like getting up in guys' faces, eating double teams, helping everybody else around them just close, the force multiplying effect he has is truly special. So yeah, he's a dominant impact he's an elite impact in the run defense. And then he's good as a pass rusher as well, because he has actually a pretty good first step, and he's just so strong that he's either going to demand double teams, and even then he can create some push on those and sometimes even slip through. But one-on-one, like, I can't imagine trying to defend his bull rush. He's a one-trick pony, but man, it's a difficult pony to try and stop. Let's just stay on the interior here. So you have Akeem Hicks next to him coming in. This could actually, this has potential to be a massive upgrade to their number 2 interior rusher from what they had last year, paired with potentially getting that from Logan Hall as well. But, Akeem Hicks's thing has been health really throughout his career. He had a couple healthy years there with the Bears where he was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. I think over the last 2 years, last year included, Akeem Hicks showed that he still has it. He's still a dominant physical force. He's up there with Vita Vea as far as freaky size, speed, athleticism, in general combinations. So if Akeem Hicks is healthy, this is one of the most ferocious interior defensive lines in the league. And hopefully he can get a little bit of that, avocado ice cream from Tom Brady, and he'll be just fine. So I love that addition. That is a chance to be a game changer for this defense, honestly. We'll stay on the interior here. So you've got William Golston, who's just kind of a unique scheme fit here. He's stuck around forever, but he's basically going to play 4-eye. They're going to pick one gap for him, and they want him to just dominate that gap, to fire off the ball, use his unique kind of tweener size and athleticism to just be a disruptive piece. And that's really what he is, both as a rusher and as a run defender. Not a lot of like gap discipline or play strength or any impeccable impact on the game, but he's kind of a necessary piece for the scheme. And he's not going to see a million snaps either. I'm listing their 5-man front because they are a team that will go base 3-4 here with him as kind of a interior defensive lineman of sorts. But yeah, he's kind of a role player. He'll rotate in and out. And Logan Hall gets drafted in the 2nd round here. I think ideally ideally he's incredible and he can be an impact year 1, but I don't know if they're necessarily counting on that. I think they more see him similar to how they saw Joe Tryon-Shoyinka last year, where he's not going to play a ton, but he'll rotate and he can develop. And next year, maybe he can be a good running man next to Vita Vea. But yeah, he's a super athletic guy. I compare him to Emmanuel Ogbah, who it took some time to really find a good scheme, to get up to speed as a pass rusher, but now he's, getting paid close to $20 million for the Miami Dolphins in a very similar role to like what William Golston does here. So I think the scheme fit makes sense. He can get there in time. I'm just really not expecting a whole lot from Logan Hall early on. I had him as more of a late 2nd, early 3rd round guy in a deep edge class, and he is a bit of a tweener, but I see what they like in him, and I think he'll have a nice career here. I just don't know if it's going to be a huge impact this year. Nunez Roches is a decent rotational run defender. Patrick O'Connor makes the team again. He's another tweener type. So it's not the deepest interior defensive line, but man, they got a lot of talent in that group, and definitely going to help them repeat, I think, as the best interior and just in general run defense in the league. And then you get to the edge group here. So you've got Shaq Barrett, who's kind of a low-end number 1 to me, a really unique player. He's just an annoying-ass pass rusher, I'm sure, to try and defend because he plays low to the ground. He's about 6'2". He's got really good bend. He uses his arms in just a really active way. I actually compared in the draft this year Arnold Ebiketie to Shaq Barrett, who just really, again, really good with his hands, like swiping away your hands, knowing when to rip, cross chops. Like, he kind of has a lot of different tools that he can use to get either through you or around you, whatever it may be. Really quick inside move, like just constantly coming at you in different directions. And it's his persistence, and he's just a guy that's going to consistently give you 75 pressures and double-digit sacks at this point. So he's their best pass rusher, and he's a super high-effort run defender as well. Uses his quickness and his arm technique to shed blocks in that regard too. And then the true kind of wild card for this D line to potentially give them like an even better than top top 10 rush, maybe sixth best pass rush might be like a ceiling for them. Joe Tryon Shoyinka, first round pick last year, was one of those opt-out players that was definitely raw coming out. Just a ton of athletic tools, just a really like lanky, athletic speed rusher type that honestly was more of that than I expected. I thought he was a little bit more of a power kind of, plant those two arms inside and drive your guy back. I thought that was a little bit more of his profile, but that really was not his game, at least in his rookie year. I think he has potential to add more weight and show a little bit more of that power in his game, and that would really be where his upside could come in. But also as far as learning from Shaq Barrett, all of those different pass rush moves we described, bringing more tricks out of his Batman tool belt, if you will, could really go a long way for him as a rusher. As a run defender, was really poor in his rookie year. You're going to have to improve there. But they will rotate him and disguise his lack of ability in run defense by putting Anthony Nelson out there, who does basically get starting reps here. He's a monster, man. 6'7", 270 pounds. And one of the best edge defenders in the league as far as defending the run, because he's got so much length and discipline and strength out there. So he's going to get significant reps, and he's been a big part of why this has been such a good run defense, because they use him in the perfect way and in the perfect situations. So they'll shelter Tryon Shoyinka's run defense there with Anthony Nelson. And then your last piece is Carl Nassib, who's just a good veteran piece to have. A little bit better as a rusher than someone like Anthony Nelson, but brings the same length and strength as a run defender. Had his best years here in Tampa several years ago before he went to Las Vegas. So, it's an incredibly deep defensive line, and that's before we even mention Devin White. There are certain players throughout this series that are just so good rushing from the second level. Micah Parsons, one of them, Jamal Adams for the Seahawks. There's certain players that just, they're massive impacts as pass rushers in a unique way, and you have to mention Devin White. He's had over 80 pressures, 13 sacks over the last 2 years. Like, especially last year, is one of the most difficult rushers to defend, even if he's coming as a blitzing linebacker. And you pair that with Todd Bowles' ability to scheme up these stunts, he's a big part of their pass rush, and you would be kidding yourself if you didn't mention his impact as a rusher. He is, I think, the best blitzing linebacker in the NFL, unless you want to count Micah Parsons as that. And I think you can make a case that Devin White ran so that Micah Parsons could fly, if you will. So there's your defensive line, 10th for pass rush, first in run defense. And then your linebackers, still one of the best linebacking duos in the NFL here, even if Devin White can't cover a nosebleed. So you got Lavonte David, who I do still see as a top 4 or 5 linebacker in the NFL and a superstar at the position. Yes, getting up there in age, perhaps losing a half a step or so, but still a monster in every phase of the game. Such a highly intelligent run defender. So, it doesn't even fully matter that he's losing a half a step. He was already a fast player to begin with. He's playing that half a step ahead of any other linebacker in the league. Maybe the best run diagnostics of any, hard to put him behind Fred Warner too. You could argue is the best run diagnostics, Bobby Wagner. He's right up there with anybody in the league as far as picking, diagnosing and breaking down a run game and getting there. Super secure tackler and really high Q coverage player as well. So he's phenomenal. A big part of them ranking 3rd for linebacker coverage, 4th for linebacker run defense. But Devin White's got to factor in here as well. And they'll shelter his inability in coverage a lot of the times. Now, he is a true liability there, right? He doesn't have the quickness. He really doesn't have the coverage IQ. He just kind of reacts to what he sees in front of him. He's a downhill north and south linebacker. You get him in space, and you can really manipulate him there. And his 4.44 speed really doesn't show most of the time in coverage. So they'll do their best job at rushing him and just letting him play sideline to sideline and run defense. You can't always protect against Devin White, but it sure as hell does help to have Lavonte David next to him. Would I pay him a contract extension after this year? Well, I'm just going to tease that for my conversation with Trevor, where I asked him. You got KJ Britt, is a kind of very similar player to Devin White, stylistically speaking. Not the long speed, but a yacked up dude, a north and south guy, good for their special teams and as a blitzer. And then Olakunle Fadukasi is someone we talk about as well in that interview with Trevor, makes the team as an undrafted free agent with a little bit of buzz. So that's Falorenzu Fadukasi's brother, and someone to certainly keep an eye on making the team here. Then we get to the secondary. The depth and talent continues. So you have a really good starting five here. One of the best cornerback trios in the league. I would say it's a top 3 cornerback trio where you have Carlton Davis, gets the contract extension, someone that everybody thought was going to go get paid by the Buffalo Bills or some other team, the Eagles, whoever it might be, looking for a corner. Tom Brady comes out of retirement like 5 minutes later. Oh, Carlton Davis is back. Don't know where the cap space came from, but there you go. He's back in the secondary, and he's a big physical man-to-man corner. You want him up in guys' faces where he can play physical, a little bit grabby, but for the most part, he's a good 1A corner, if you will. And then I think they have their 1B in Jamel Dean, who's playing in a contract year. Another very physical guy, but in different ways. He's just big and a big hitter and really good long speed. Not quite as good in press coverage and as consistent in coverage as Carlton Davis, but a little bit more splashy. So a good number 2 to have next to Carlton Davis. And then you have Sean Murphy Bunting, who's definitely the least consistent of the 3, also in a contract year. But he is the most athletically gifted of the 3. And I think in a contract year, he even has potential to show to be this team's best corner. He just has to stay healthy and put it all together. I don't necessarily expect that to happen, but it goes to show you how well he fits in here. So they're really able to move these guys around. Dean and Bunting especially, either of them can play from the slot. So you're able to pick your matchups and really put these guys on the right receivers that they're physically capable of defending. And they're all a little bit different stylistically. So kind of a diversity of skill sets in their cornerback room in a brilliant way. Your cornerback depth is not great. They got to stay healthy. You technically could have Logan Ryan play from the slot if someone went down. So you have a little bit of flexibility there. But D. Delaney, unproven veteran. And then Zion McCollum, definitely someone with incredible upside, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got on the field and was better than we expect for a late day 3 pick. But one of the, if not literally the most physically gifted corners to ever come out of the draft, if you were only looking at testing numbers. Over 6 feet tall, 4.3 speed, ridiculous 3-cone, jumped out the gym, length. I'm really surprised that he did not go on day 2 of the draft. Yeah, was a 5th-year senior and, played at Sam Houston State. There's some things there. He's not the most technically refined corner in the world, but here in a situation where you're probably losing either Jamel Dean or Sean Murphy Bunting, I think the 2023 Bucs will be really happy to have Zion McCollum, who my pro comp was Sean Murphy Bunting, by the way. So there's your cornerback room, and then a really fun safety group. Antoine Winfield to me is so awesome. He is the true do-it-all safety. I think he's already in the conversation for a top 5 safety in the league. Does not consistently get mentioned there, but there's nothing he can't do. He can play slot corner, free safety, strong safety, single high zone, 2 high zone, man coverage, quarters coverage. You can blitz him. He'll play run defense. He is awesome. Very similar to what you're getting from Kevin Byard in Tennessee. So I think he's a star safety already, and I'm putting an up arrow next to him because I have a bit of a take here. I think there's a decent chance that Antoine Winfield takes the crown as the best safety in the NFL this year, and nobody really thinks of him that way, but I think he is that good. So Antoine Winfield is the best player in this secondary right now, in my opinion, and probably this team's most underrated player as well. And then Mike Edwards next to him. Excited to see him get a full opportunity as a starter here. He's played really good football as their 3rd safety, so you can't expect too much from him, or at least grade him out too high coming into the year, but they clearly trust him. They more than willingly let Jordan Whitehead out the door, And he's made a lot of plays here and knows this defense and should step in pretty seamlessly as their number 2 safety. So really good starting 5. You got Logan Ryan as a 3rd safety, a 4th corner, kind of the traditional like true dime back there. He's played every position on the football field. So really nice, experienced guy that can still play some football. Keanu Neal is basically a linebacker, special teamer, backup safety. Not a good safety in coverage, but definitely a good run defender. So, yeah, it's a really good secondary. They rank 4th in the league. Defense in general, you can tell, is just remarkably balanced and talented across the board. I'm just in awe of the roster building that they've had with this group, and I expect them to be the best defense in the NFL this year, ranking 2nd in pass defense and 1st in run defense. So, really special unit. Now we're going to tie a ribbon on this. We're going to recap this team before we get into the interview here with Trevor Sikkema. So, again, 2nd offense, 1st on defense. Their special teams for me is fine. Their kicker situation is a little bit in the woods right now, so with the punter and the kicker. So we'll see how that sorts itself out, but it's fine, I think. And then your strengths and weaknesses as a final snapshot here. I mean, what isn't a strength for this team? Really, you got coach and culture, quarterback, receivers, D-line, linebackers, secondary. So many strengths on this team. I think weaknesses are pretty small as well. You have the interior offensive line. Definitely needs to be proved that they can play well. That's the really only true roster weakness on this team. And then I guess you have a risk of age regression, right? You've got Tom Brady, you have Leonard Fournette getting up there in age for a running back. I guess defensively, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Akeem Hicks. Like, there are some older players on this team. I don't think it's like a huge risk, but Julio Jones, another guy. Like, there's a lot of age on this team that could be an issue, but I really don't think it will be. It's just something to keep an eye on. And then let's take a look at this team's schedule. So their Vegas over-under is 11.5, tied with the Bills for the highest in the league. Their schedule's not a cakewalk. I actually have it as a no bet on that one. And they could start like 2-2, even 1-3. I'm not saying that's likely, but it could happen. You've got a tough opener at Dallas, at New Orleans, who's given this team fits. Green Bay coming to town, Kansas City coming to town. Like, those are really good teams. So, like, if they start slow, don't come calling to me like, oh, you overrated this team. No, let them get through a couple more division games. They got Atlanta, at Pitt, Carolina, Seattle, at Cleveland down the horizon there. Cleveland being that last game with Jacoby Brissett, classic Tom Brady luck. Watson comes back the next week. You've got down the stretch, your last 4 games, Cincinnati at home, at Arizona, Carolina, at Atlanta. It's definitely not an easy schedule. Like, they're going to have to show that they are the number 1 team in football, and not necessarily that far, but they're going to have to win some tough games and be beasts if they want to get to 12 wins with this schedule. I think it's definitely possible. I wouldn't bet on them to go under that for sure, but my projections only had them out at 10.8 wins, just based on some of the difficult matchups they have. Super Bowl odds at 7-1. I think that's probably about as good as they'll get, and I obviously think this team has a legitimate chance at a Super Bowl. They've done it before, a really experienced team, Tom Brady, playoff luck. Like, there's really no reason this team can't or shouldn't win the Super Bowl, so I have no problems with them at 7-1 if you want to make that bet. So that's all we got on my end. We are now going to turn things over to our interview with Trevor Sikkema, which is awesome. I hope you guys enjoy it. Before we go any further with the video, I want to take a second to tell you about my friends at SeatGeek. I truly believe that SeatGeek outclasses all of the other ticketing apps. It's where I buy all of my tickets, and for good reason. I really enjoyed partnering with them. They're great with me, but they just have the best app, the best user interface. They have the best prices. You get your tickets immediately. They have customer support. Again, I really think you should be buying your tickets on SeatGeek. If you're going to football games, other sporting events, concerts, do it on SeatGeek. And now using promo code FranchiseGuy, you will save $20 on your first purchase. And all the better, you're going to support my channel in the process. So again, that's promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. And let's get back to the video. And now I am thrilled to welcome into the Buccaneers Deep Dive my good friend Trevor Sikkema, now with PFF, formerly of the Locked On Draft podcast. Thanks for taking the time to come on, man. How you doing today?
Dude, Marcus, I'm doing great. This has been a really fun series to follow that you've been kind of putting on. I know all the work that's been put into it behind the scenes. And so I'm truly honored. I really am for this number one spot for this final episode. So I appreciate you having me on, man.
The real grand finale here, man. You've got the spotlight. So let's
pressure.
have some fun.
No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Seriously. So my first question for you is kind of what's your stance, your feel on the training camp vibes right now? Because I know a lot of the talk is about some kind of negative energy around the Bucs. So do you think it's just training camp talk, or are you starting to kind of, I guess, feel a little bit less optimistic about the Bucs heading into the year?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm less optimistic. Look, obviously, the Tom Brady thing is kind of in a league of its own, right? Where he just ups and leaves for whatever it was, a week and a half, 2 weeks. Can't remember exactly how many days it was, but and then he's very ambiguous about exactly what's going on. You couple that with the fact that he retired, and then all of a sudden he just unretires. And like, I've obviously, as somebody who watches a lot of Tampa football, I'm glad that he unretired. But you were wondering, like, all right, is like everybody cool with this? Like, I thought he did this like right off into the sunset. I've had a great career, want to spend time with my family, and so for him to just kind of like leave in the middle of training camp, I'm not worried about his availability during the season. It put a weird vibe into the last month, I would say, just with everything that's going on. I don't think it really carries into the regular season. Tom Brady's still Tom Brady. He's still going to be an assassin on the football field. He's still going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the world. So in that aspect, I'm not really worried about the Brady stuff. It was just a little weird when you pile it on top of the injuries, right? Godwin's not there to start things off because he's coming back from that ACL tear. Ryan Jensen goes down very early. Aaron Stinney goes down, the backup there. You already had shuffling around with Ali Marpet and Alex Kappa being gone. Shaq Mason's plugging in. Who's playing that left guard spot? So it's just all of those things. Coaching staff as well, now that I think about it. Todd Bowles taking over as the head coach. Some people like, okay, well, Bowles wasn't great in New York. Is he going to be great in Tampa? So with all of those things made it for a little bit different of a vibe. I can definitely understand why you're asking that question there, because that's true. I would say it just was a different vibe in Tampa. But when it comes to the regular season, as we are on the eve of it now, I don't really have that many issues. I think the offensive line's going to be all right. I think they've got the talent there, and it's just kind of about getting the familiarity. And as long as nobody else gets hurt, I think they're all right. Brady's going to be Brady. Chris Godwin's coming back before the week 4 because he wasn't on the PUP list. I still think Todd Bowles is a fantastic defensive mind, and I think he learned a lot from his head coaching time in New York. So when it's all said and done, when that ball kicks off in the regular season, I'm really not worried about it. This sort of an odd training camp, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not betting against him. I got him number 1 right now. So, like, I do think it's one of those deals where once they start playing football, it'll all be behind them. And I think this team is so loaded, man. Like, second Brady came back out of retirement, I was like, God, they're just going to bring this whole thing back. Like, the Packers fan in me was like, we got the NFC, man. This is all us. And then I'm like, oh, he's back. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was kind of expecting. They re-signed Carlton Davis. Oh, Ryan Jensen's back. It's just like they're getting the whole. Oh, Julio Jones, like fan freaking tastic. Like, this is just all great.
You can't forget Gronk coming out of retirement in November, which we're all expecting to be the case for the postseason run. So you got that too.
I mean, I'm taking small wins here that you lost future starting center J.C. Treader to retirement, because I thought that was a lock too.
Because he would have been just straight on the team if he wasn't just retiring.
Seriously. So you mentioned a little bit of like the change of the coaching staff. Are there any, I guess, notable changes that you might have some concerns about with any of the coaching staff changes?
Really, no. And that's because Bruce Arians was very hands-off. When it came to like the game day stuff, he really was. The defensive game plan was mainly Todd Bowles putting that together. Now, they would obviously consult with Bruce Arians, and they'd all kind of come up with it together. They'd get the input of players, like veteran guys like Levante David, Shaq Barrett, some of the secondary players as well. Hey, where are you most comfortable? How can we help you play the best? And so it's very player friendly in what they're doing. The Bucs are absolutely not a team where it's like, this is my scheme. This is what we're going to play. If you're bad at it, you just better get better at it. That's not really how they play. And so even with Arians out, and I guess he's technically not out, he's like a assistant to the head coach or front office thing. I don't know what his title is. It's wonderful. He gets to ride around in a golf cart and just get paid a paycheck every week, which is beautiful. I mean, Bruce Arians truly living the life that we all wish that we got to live. But
I think that's what he's worked his whole career for, right?
100%. Yeah, it is to get to that. It's not about winning a Super Bowl. It's about getting paid to ride a golf cart at the near end of your career
and party with the team after the game,
and take all the credit. If they end up winning. Well, not all the credit, but So on the other side of the ball too, Byron Leftwich is still there. No idea how the Jacksonville Jaguars really fumbled that bag with him not being their head coach. Granted, I like Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, so I want to make that clear as well. But it just seemed like this was an easy, obvious hire for Byron Leftwich, and it felt like behind the scenes they really blew that, because I thought they were for sure going to lose at least one of them this offseason. Right. They were going to lose at least Todd Bowles, at least Byron Leftwich. One of them, if not both, is a nightmare scenario. Both those guys are back, and both of those guys are the ones that implemented the game plans, that were hands-on listening to the players. And so really that answer is no. And I think that's the reason why people like you have the Bucs still very high on their power ranking list, sometimes at the very top. And a big reason why the win total for the Buccaneers, the over-under win total, and the projections of whether or not they're going to win the Super Bowl, they're all still very high, because despite changing head coaches, it's still the majority of the guys on that coaching staff that have led this team to success over the last couple of years. So I don't expect too much difference from them.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer personally. So naturally I want to talk about the draft with you a little bit. So I just want to kind of go down the board of the big picks and kind of what you thought about each guy pre-draft and how you view them plugging in this year, what kind of role you think they'll have. Yeah. So starting with Logan Hall.
Yeah. So, I mean, Logan, it's so funny. Logan was like the Buccaneers player. Like, this was a Jason Light type of player. Tweener guy, versatile defensive lineman. You bring up the name Will Golston, who's been with the Buccaneers for almost a decade now, and you just say this is a more talented Will Golston. And clearly they love Golston enough for him to have made it through multiple head coaching regimes, success with the team and failure with the team. He has been on this roster for so long through so many different kinds of ups and downs. And that felt like the scheme fit comp, is a player who can play inside as a 3-technique defensive tackle if you want him to, who can kick out as a 4-eye or a 5-tech defensive end if you want him to, depending on the play. So with a guy like Todd Bowles, who loves versatility and confusion along his defensive line, having a guy like Hall, it felt like he was always going to be a Bucs target. I know there were a handful of other guys there at the back end of the first round. They were very interested in guys like Lewis Seen. They like Trey McBride as well, but it ultimately ended up being Logan Hall, because as we've seen, I think over the last couple of years, Jason Light really likes to prioritize building in those trenches, getting depth there, and then attacking secondaries as well. So that's that's what I thought about the Logan Hall pick. It was kind of expected, and not sure he plays a ton this year just because of how veteran the group is, right? The only spot they're really replacing is that true pass rusher spot for Jason Pierre-Paul. But I think Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, the first round pick the year prior, is going to get most of those snaps. You got Shaq Barrett on the other side, Vita Vea, and Akeem Hicks on the interior. So Logan Hall will get in there, but I wouldn't expect a ton from him this year.
Yeah, it did make so much sense, because when you think about that Bucs D line, it's like those knifing defensive ends that just kind of open things up and create chaos up front. So I was like, I wasn't a huge fan of Logan Hall that high. Like, I had him more as like an end of 2, early 3 kind of guy, but it's just one of those picks. It's just like, it's going to make sense. And he might never have like a high grading profile or produce like a million sacks, but like, he makes so much sense with Todd Bowles' defense. It was just like, yeah, all right, that adds up. So, and then what about Luke Goddick in the back of the second? A little earlier, I think, than a lot of people thought he'd come off.
Yeah, certainly a good pick now, right? They need him. He might even be starting at left guard now. And I think the Bucs have done a good job over the last couple of years picking up some quality depth players along the offensive line. Robert Hainsey's another one who was a Notre Dame offensive lineman who not a lot of people talked about, but he had a ton of experience in Notre Dame at a lot of different spots. And so like he goes in the mid round, you go, all right, this is I don't know how I feel about this pick, but you realize as a swing offensive lineman, he's somebody who could have plug and played in a variety of different spots. And we're seeing him now potentially being the answer at center as long as he's going to be healthy, which they're kind of still figuring out now. I think he's going to be healthy. I think he's going to be okay. But that's a versatile interior offensive lineman. And I think they think the same thing with Gadecki and just a spit in a vinegar, tough as nails, kind of offensive lineman, smaller school guy. That's who they were. That's who they were really looking at with him. And I think that the Jason Light has gone to that small school, non-power 5 well plenty of times throughout his GM tenure. And for him to go after a guy whose characteristics he really liked as a trench player, it makes sense. And like I said, it might be paying off for him very quickly if he ends up getting that left guard starting gig.
Yeah, what do you think about him as far as like that scheme? Because I know they're really gap heavy, and it is more of a traditional drop back game. I'd be a little worried about like his anchoring and his people moving ability, as opposed to maybe if he were in like a wide zone type of deal. What do you think about
No,
that?
I think his mentality fits still for that power style that they have. I would have
Sure.
said that especially if Ryan Jensen was still at center.
Hmm.
Um, with Ryan Jensen not there, it's a little bit different. The character makeup of the offensive line, it might be a little bit different because it's not as gritty, it's not as nasty.
Sure.
But I really did. I like that combination. And that's what they liked in Alex Kappa too. When they drafted Alex Kappa a
True.
couple years back, is they liked that mentality part of his game to where they'd be running a lot of inside power stuff, some duo blocks, really just moving people up front and up the middle. I think that they believe he's got that mental makeup to be that kind of an offensive lineman, which is a big characteristic of what they still want in Tampa.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then they go running back in the third with Rashad White. A little more straightforward there, I feel like.
Yeah, hoping maybe one day be Tom Brady's best friend, right? We've seen the James White role many times in New England. I feel like that's what they want Rashad White to be. Now they've got Leonard
Hmm.
Fournette, and they like the fact that Leonard Fournette is a bigger back. Again, fits in that power system. He can
But
pass
how
block.
big do they like him, Trevor? How big?
Not as big as when he showed up at whatever. Well, I don't remember. I don't even remember what was the weight for him. But
I
it
heard
was
like 255, I think was the number I
dude,
heard.
I think it was higher than. I think it was higher
Oh
than
my God.
that. And it's like I
Uh,
think Leonard Fournette can like play at 250. I think he was higher than that. I remember watching a clip of him at the beginning of training camp, and I think it was the one where he was on the treadmill, like training for the season. I was like, dude. Like, are you playing fullback? Like, come on, man. And I get it. Like, these athletes have lives. They can do whatever they want to do. But there definitely comes a point to where you're putting on a little too much weight. I felt like
mhm.
Fournette had a little bit too much weight, but I think he's fine now. He's still going to be that guy to play in that power role. But Rashad's going to be a good compliment to him. And he had a pretty good preseason, and he had a good training camp, all things considered, for a rookie. I think that they're hoping that he could be that potential third down back at some point.
Yeah, no, he definitely has that skill set. All right, the only other guy that really stood out to me later in the draft was Zion McCollum, and it was myself. A lot of people were super high on him. I had him in the second. What did you have on him pre-draft?
So I had him as like an early day 3 pick, but
Sure.
there's so much potential there, right? I mean, it was him and who was the guy that got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks? Oh, he went to the Senior Bowl. Oh my God, how am I forgetting his name? Tariq Woolen, thank you. Tariq Woolen. They were kind
Yes.
of like cut from the same cloth, right? These bigger, taller, lengthier cornerbacks who just like test out of the gym, and it's like just insane athleticism. And I think that we've seen before that the Bucs really like to bet on those kinds of guys. I specifically go back to the Jamel Dean pick. The Bucs picked Jamel Dean in, I believe it was the 3rd round, and there were a lot of people that year that were like, "Whoa,
Mm-hmm.
Dean's talented." But he was very hurt. So it's a little bit of a different story. But still, he was very green as a football player because he had been hurt so much. So he had the injuries. He didn't have a ton of snaps under his belt when he came out from Auburn. And the Bucs were like, no. We're taking a chance on this guy because of how athletic he is at a size, which gives him a unique combination of skill set at the cornerback position. I think they want the same from Zion, right? And the beauty of it is Dean was kind of in that position where they drafted him and it was like, hey, you might have to play actually early on. So there was a little bit of worry there. There's not really that kind of worry with McCollum. You could stash him. I think that he'll get plenty of reps this season because you don't carry that many corners anyways. But you've got Carlton Davis, you have Jamel Dean, you have Sean Murphy Bunting. As long as those guys are healthy, that's the main rotation. You get to put Zion in when he's comfortable, when you want to build his confidence, when you get to challenge him a little bit. So I did. I thought that he was a guy that you definitely want to take a chance on because of the rarity of his skill set. And I mean, I know a lot of other people that were also pretty high on him, as you were too.
Yeah. My pro comp for him was Sean Murphy Bunting. So it was just like,
Oh,
well,
hell
he's going to
yeah.
replace him
Love
in
that.
here.
Love that.
Yep. So, and then moving on to kind of some of these other, well, actually, I want to float one other question in here.
Mhm.
Who's like the rookie that's getting the most camp hype from what you've seen? Is it
Ooh.
Rashad White or someone else?
So I've actually got to say that it's Fudikasi.
Ooh.
Their rookie there because he made the team. Like he made like he and Todd Bowles is I think because when did they hold on, let me double check this.
And is this is Falorenzo's brother?
I believe there's no way there's that many Fudikasis out there. So it has to be. I'm checking to see if he is related.
And is he the linebacker?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's related. Hey, I knew that he had to be, but I hadn't triple checked that. He's a middle linebacker there. And Todd Bowles' quote for him was he forced his way onto this team. The Bucs don't really need linebackers. They have Levante David, they have Devin White. Those are actually two different kind of skill set guys. They have Anthony Nelson as well, who still plays kind of like more of an on-ball linebacker at times for them. So I never thought this guy was going to make the team.
Right.
The Bucs are such a talented roster that anytime you get an undrafted free agent, it's basically like, hey, enjoy some camp reps and some preseason reps. You're going to get cut. That's how deep of a roster this is. Obviously, number one on your rankings for a reason. They're Super Bowl caliber. But Fudikasi, Todd Bowles' quote, again, forced his way onto this 53-man roster, which I think is really impressive. And that's the guy I got to highlight as the guy who stood out the most in camp because he had so far to climb to make this 53-man roster, and he did.
I love it. I'll keep an eye out for him. So another big kind of guy stepping into a bigger role this year is Mike Edwards. What do you think about him and kind of his ability to fill in as the full-time starter?
Yeah, they've had a really nice safety rotation over the last couple of years, and I think Edwards plays off of Antoine Winfield Jr. really, really well. And I think that that's the most important part of being a safety tandem, right? We saw it with the Buffalo Bills last year, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, two talented safeties for sure. But if you ask people, hey, name the best safeties in the NFL, you'd get a handful of names before you would get to somebody saying Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. And I think the reason why you would say those guys is because the next words out of somebody's mouth would be, oh, I'll go Micah Hyde. Man, that duo last year in Buffalo was so good. They always bring that up. And so to have that kind of chemistry is so, so important. And I feel like Edwards and Antoine Winfield Jr. are so in sync as a safety duo whenever they've been on the field at the same time. And so we've seen before that Edwards has that playmaking, ball hawking ability. They trust each other to the point where they know obviously who's dropping and who's going up towards the line of scrimmage. They have that freedom and trust in the rest of their teammates to where they can constantly be looking at the quarterback's eyes, constantly be jumping those balls. And I think you see that with their ball production for both those guys over the last couple of years. You're going to get plenty of Logan Ryan in there. They brought Logan Ryan back. They had initially cut him and people were like, whoa, what are you doing? But they were only cutting him to put Ryan Jensen on IR, then open that roster spot back up, bring Logan Ryan back onto the team. I know they like Logan Ryan a lot. He's a guy who's got a ton of versatility playing either strong safety, deep safety, or even slot defender at times. So they'll rotate him in plenty, but the Bucs like that 3 safety deep rotation. And so Edwards being more of that starter this year, I don't think it's going to be anything that's new for him, overwhelming for him. He's going to be ready for it, especially the fact that Antoine Winfield Jr. is standing next to him.
Okay. All right. All right. My next question is you get to pick, you have to bet on one breakout candidate. And you can pick anyone we've talked about already if you want.
What constitutes a breakout candidate?
I would describe it as like going from, like, if you view a guy in a certain tier, he elevates to another tier. So if he's a starter, he turns into a stud player. If he's a stud, he turns into a superstar.
Okay.
Or it could be a backup turns into a starter.
Okay, I'll give you 2 because I will cover my bases and have one that's a starter who I think is going to become a really damn good football player. And then I'll give you like a lower roster guy who I think is going to contribute.
Perfect.
First one is Joe Tryon Shoyinka. I mentioned him already, now getting a starting spot opposite Shaq Barrett. he has really flashed over the last handful of games that he's been able to get into and actually get into a rhythm. I just think that his skill set's fantastic, man. There was a lot of unknown with him coming out of Washington. Just didn't have a lot of playing time due to opting out with the COVID season. But athletic dude, you loved his build, and you figured that it would take a little bit of time for him. But man, whether it was the preseason last year or the couple of times that he was able to get in the past regular season, I believe he had 4 sacks when it was all said and done. He was really able to flash. More snaps from him. I'll just say more experience, and especially on a defensive line that's got the veteran presence in the middle, the dominating veteran presence in the middle of Vita Vea next to Akeem Hicks, who I think is a great addition for this team. And then, of course, Shaq Barrett's on the other side. And this guy had 19 and a half sacks a couple of years ago. Now, I even when it happened, I was like, Shaq Barrett's never going to be a 19 and a half sack and a guy again. But offensive line coaches, when they're game planning, they got to go, okay, we have to account for Shaq Barrett, which means that you get less double teams, less attention on the other side with Tryon Shoyinka. I think he's going to have a big year. I think somewhere between, I know it's a decent gap, but I'll say anything from like 8 to 11 sacks, man. I think that we could potentially get double-digit sacks from Tryon Shoyinka if he's playing the majority of the time and isn't in a heavy rotation with some of the other guys that they have there. And then the other player that I will shout out, Cade Otton, the tight end, who they drafted this year, who I know the Bucs really liked. Again, I said that they were pretty big on Trey McBride. When they missed out on Trey McBride, I think they got, quote unquote, the other guy that they really liked from the tight end position in that tight end group. And Kyle Rudolph's a new face. Cameron Brate, very steady, of course, but the Bucs are going to run a lot of multi-tight end sets. And I think that we saw from this preseason, Cade Otton is going to have the opportunity to get on the football field. He really is. And I think that that is somebody who, looking at the room and around him at tight end, there's going to be opportunities for him to play plenty as a rookie. So, if he ends up getting 1-2 touchdowns, couple of decent catches a game, I wouldn't shock me. So those are the two guys that I think could be the quote unquote breakout for where they're currently slotted.
Otton was another guy I had on the board. The pro comp was Cameron Brate. So I was like,
there it is,
the perfect replacements with this draft.
They are who we thought they were. The Bucs
exactly. All right, I got a little mini game here to wrap things up. It's more of a look down the road a little bit. So you are now Jason Light. Let's just say has won another Super Bowl and has decided to retire, and you're now he dips into Cincinnati and takes you out of PFF for the GM job.
Wonderful.
All right. So this is going to be like a would you rather type of, like, you have to make a decision on some of these situations.
Okay.
So first off is your quarterback situation. Tom Brady's retired. So your options are start Kyle Trask, draft a round 1 quarterback not named CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, or sign a veteran. And it's not like a Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford type of
veteran.
Right.
No. Right.
We're in the bridge QB.
Look, I'll just say this. I wasn't the biggest fan of Kyle Trask when he was drafted where he was on draft night. I'm a University of Florida grad. I watched every single pass that Trask ever took. I was clamoring for Kyle Trask to play over Felipe Franks when that was the case down in Florida. Trask played very well when he got in at Florida. I never saw him as starting quarterback material in the NFL. I didn't think that he had that assassin-like mentality to him. I didn't think that he had the greatest arm. His arm is fine. Like, I think his arm is pro level, but again, this is somebody who I thought was just going to be maybe a spot starter at times, but mostly just a backup throughout his NFL career. I still think that with Trask, and he's done a lot better lately, which is good to see. He's certainly progressing, but I'm not so sure that he's ever going to be like a guy that you absolutely invest in. The issue that I would have with the question and how it's set up is, if the Bucs win another Super Bowl this year, if Brady rides off into the sunset, Jason Light rides off in the sunset, they're obviously picking 31st in the draft, not 32nd, because there's only 31 picks because the Dolphins lost their first round pick.
That's right.
They're picking at the end of the first round. You're probably not going to get a quarterback worth it, even in this quarterback class, which we think can be decently deep. So going into next year, even though I wouldn't think that Trask would be the guy long-term, I'd probably still ride with him. I would probably still, he's on his rookie contract, play. If he blows expectations out of the water and you absolutely love him, then there you go. You got your guy, I guess, that you can invest in. But if he doesn't and he's bad, then you're in a better position to draft a quarterback a little bit higher in the draft that you would want. So there's a long answer to the question. I'd probably play Kyle Trask next year.
Yeah. Okay. And then you now have a couple of star players who had big years who are holding out. So Devin White wants 5 years, $100 million.
Okay.
Trade him or pay him?
I'd probably trade him. And I know that's gonna be sacrilegious for a lot of Bucs fans who absolutely love him. And look, I love Devin White as well. Like, he's an awesome player. He's an awesome dude. Love having him on the team. I'm just not for paying linebackers that much money when they're not giving you a ton in coverage. Like, if you're not that Fred Warner, what Levante David has been for them, right? Like the Shaq Leonards, even like those guys who give you really good value everywhere at the linebacker position. I feel like Devin White is still a downhill linebacker. Now, if he comes out this year and looks like shades of Derek Brooks in coverage, okay, maybe now we're actually having a conversation. But as it stands to this point, Devin White is a athletic, downhill kind of linebacker that's still a liability in coverage. And if he didn't have Levante David next to him, I think the linebacker room would be a different feeling around it. Devin White's allowed to play as freely as he is right now because he has David next to him, and David can take a lot of those coverage responsibilities. So all that to say, I know he's a fan favorite. I know he's a big energy guy, and I do love Devin. I really do. But yeah, I'd trade him rather than give a linebacker that big money.
Yeah, I'd do the same. Okay, the other holdout is Antoine Winfield. And if you trade my fellow Minnesotan Golden Gopher here, you're getting cut from the show here.
Well, no, there's not a chance. I'd pay Antoine Winfield Jr. He brings you so much versatility. He's a guy who they could play single high as a free safety. He can come down. He can play in the box as a strong safety. He's been in a slot defender role. He can blitz off the edge. He can do so many different things for you. And what encapsulate that the most, and the reason why I would pay him, is because of the football IQ. When you're a safety, you're the last line of defense, right? You have to manage so much space. You have to be able to understand, process things at a very high speed that are happening right in front of you at the linebacker level, what you see on the sidelines with the corners, how fast the defensive line might be getting to the quarterback. Is he escaping the pocket? Is he staying in the pocket? What guys are coming into your zone? What concepts are they running? Can't get beat deep. All of these things you have to think about at all times while managing space around you. And the more space you have, the higher football IQ you have to have for understanding coverage and spatial awareness. And I just think that Antoine Winfield Jr. does that at such a high level. That's the kind of player that you pay. That's the kind of safety, last line of defense, guy who can see it all from the very back, has the full picture. That's the guy that you want to be doing that. So he wouldn't be going anywhere if it was up to me.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked you that is because I think that's like possible. Like, I think he could have one of those years where he starts to be viewed with Jesse Bates and Bayard and Derwin as like one of the top 4 safeties in the league. And he's like, yeah, I don't really want to pay on my play this 4th year on my rookie contract.
Right.
Give me 20 mil. And I don't even know, like, I would give him that. I think he's so freaking good. He's
think they pay him. Yeah, I think they pay him.
He's awesome. All right. I know I've kept you a little bit longer, and you don't even have to analyze this one. What's your biggest overreaction to the first Saturday of college football? Anthony Richardson, number 1.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida Gator in me. Anthony Richardson win Heisman. Florida's about to be in the top 10. Dude, I'm not going to lie. I went into this whole week saying that Georgia under 11 wins was one of my favorite bets this year. Because I was like, you're saying that just Georgia team, after losing 15 players to the NFL draft, is going to reload well enough to win 11 wins? I was like, no freaking way. And granted, I thought Oregon was way overrated the way that we were talking about them. I also think that Bo Nix has been one of the most bad to mid quarterbacks in college football over the last 3 years. And we just keep talking about him as if like he's going to be good someday. That was never going to be the case. So Georgia beat a really inferior football team. I think the SEC is a little bit different, but I am a little bit more nervous now about that 11 wins because I think Alabama looked unbelievable. Georgia looked unbelievable. Florida with the big win. It was fantastic. Ohio State didn't look as dominant as we thought they were going to. So maybe there's a little bit of shakiness there. Those are kind of my initial thoughts as I'm just like thinking about everything in my head. But man, it was a beautiful Saturday to have all of that back. New faces, new quarterbacks, new offenses, new defenses. Just so many things to pay attention to in college football that is going to make this year a lot of fun. I know that Alabama and Georgia are probably going to be at the very top at the end of it, and people are going to be like, oh, yeah, no parity in college football. But even if there are teams that aren't playing for the national championship, it's fun to follow, especially at the beginning of the year with all the changes. So this Saturday was great.
Yeah, I had a blast watching it. And I don't watch a ton during the season, but I was glued to my TV all day. It was a great Saturday. Yeah. All right, Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time. Everybody make sure you go check out Trevor's work with the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Everybody who's on your channel, very familiar with YouTube, we're actually starting a daily show at PFF Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Called It's Just Football. Myself and Mike Renner, we're talking, just football. And so a lot of stuff every day. We're going to be having a lot of fun doing that. But Marcus, this was awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on the show. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And voila, we are done. The series, 45 hours of prepping for this season. We made it a couple days before the season here. You guys, we got some more great football content right around the horizon here. Make sure you're subscribed up. We're going to have my full predictions show tomorrow. We're going to have my power rankings update already on Thursday, weekly picks either on Friday or Saturday. I'm also, as of right now, planning on streaming for the Thursday night football game here on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed. You got those notifications on. We got a lot of great content here coming this week and into the season. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. If you're still here and you haven't hit that like button yet, please do. Really help me out. Share the series with your friends and family. Just really love you guys. Thank you for watching. We made it. Can't believe it, but peace out. We'll see you soon.